Hey everybody, this is Bazooka Joe and Bazooka Joe. Wow, that takes me back to my DJ Joe's days. I'm slurring. This is Joseph Aleo, and we are going to be talking to Josh Heath, who wrote the issue "The Waves for Vikings versus Samurai." So let me invite the man right now. Hate this part. So unnatural. Here we go. Josh, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you see me, Josh? Oh, here we go. Josh!
Joe, how are you?
Pretty good. The man, the myth, the legend. I bet you all to myself for like 5 to 10 minutes. You got a tattoo today.
I did get a tattoo. So I got a tattoo of Orko from He-Man with a bunch of, he's thinking about various RPGs that I like to play. So that is the awesome tattoo. I will send you a picture because it is awesome.
Wait, wait. Now we're going to talk about your story for Vikings versus Samurai,
Sure.
but you got to show us the tattoo. Can you show us the tattoo, or is it
Um,
someplace in your nether regions?
no, it's on my leg. I will try, and I don't know if that
Oh, look
works.
at that! I can see some of it. So, what are some of the graphics there? Does that look like a bomb? One of those old-fashioned cartoon bombs? What do you got there?
Uh, so it's a bunch of different games that I like. There's the Robotech symbol. It was the first RPG I ever played. Mage the Ascension is on there. I've got the Prime symbol. Werewolf the Apocalypse. There's a deep cut D&D one on there. So there's a couple of different things like that.
So, let me ask you this: there are a bunch of people getting into fantasy through The Hobbit or Dungeons and Dragons, but as I've gotten older, I've learned a lot of people got into role-playing games through He-Man. Was that the case for you?
I think probably I had He-Man stuff before I even remember, right? Like I as like a real young kid, it was a thing that I just had tons of. And so I think that was definitely a gateway, even though I didn't necessarily know it. But Robotech actually was the first role-playing game that I ever really played, and that was kind of the real gateway for me was playing that and then going LARPing and doing some other stuff like that.
I didn't even know there was such a thing. And we'll get in role playing games in just a second. So we're here to talk about the waves. You and I go way back. We have this connection with Mage the podcast and Werewolf the podcast. In fact, you're the man who said, you know what? You should call your podcast Mage the podcast. I said, you know what? That's simple and brilliant, and it's what I expect from you all the time. So the waves. We were talking. You were in San Diego a couple months ago, and I said, you know, you should write a story for Vikings versus Samurai. And boy, did you deliver! So the waves. It's a very short story. It's a heartbreaking woe tale, and it's a man who's been transplanted and uplifted to a new location. He's at the end of his life, but we see him as a boy. Where did this story come from?
I have no idea. 100%, I have no idea. I had well, I have sort of an idea, right? Say no idea, and then maybe there's an inkling of one. But I was just around the house and was like, I have an idea, and wrote it in about 15 minutes. From beginning to end, was like, yep, this is exactly what I want to write. And then maybe about 30 minutes after that, after looking it over, I sent it to you and was like, hey, what do you think about this idea that I've got? But I love the ocean, have always loved the ocean, and so I think the waves is for me like I tapped into the fact that waves sound differently depending on which ocean and which side of the ocean you're on, and that was I think the impetus that really got me rolling with this particular story.
I did not know that about the ocean, but it makes perfect sense. Well, it didn't take you very long to write, but it has a hell of an impact. So I have to ask you, what was it like actually seeing it in print, or so to speak, on the web?
Yeah, it's amazing. This is the first graphic novel script that I've ever written, and I've given art notes before for like role playing games and things like that, but this is a totally different experience where like I have a very set story in my head that I want to see on the page, and we made it happen, and it's amazing. I love all of the art and the way the story is just captured so well, in the way the artist was able to convey the things that I was like, hey, what about this idea? And they did an amazing job doing that.
You hit me right in the heart. And Burger, our illustrator, he did a wonderful job of capturing it. But I want to ask you, were there any challenges writing a script for a one-page story?
It's hard, right? Because you're like, I need to get this whole story out in a single page. And I thankfully had a really contained idea, so it was a little bit easier to say, okay, I got one page, this is the story, it's out. But it's never easy to condense something like this, right? Like I could have easily, I can picture it in my head, a 32-page version of this particular story, which probably would be great. But being able to capture it in a single page, I think it was awesome.
To be honest, to me, it's almost a haiku. I think you would have lost something if it was any larger. You really hit the key points, and I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, you hit me right in the heart. And if you're watching this right now, I strongly advise you go to VikingsVSSamurai.com. That's VikingsVSSamurai.com. So as long as we're talking about comic books, you are working on your own comic book. So why don't you tell us about that?
I am, yeah. So after I put this script together for you, I got the idea. I'm like, I'd like to write something sequential. What would I do? And then I was like, what would be really cool is a memoir of my life, but told through the various role-playing games that I've run and played throughout the years. Because really, they've been like, since I was 12-ish, the bookend of everything that that has happened in my life. So it's just a really good way of being like, this is my story, this is my life story through those various games. And I've got about 10 pages of that done so far. We've started on the first page with the artist, and I'm going to be putting out very slowly, but I think it's going to be cool. I think people are going to enjoy it.
Artist.
It's called My Life as a GM. Yeah.
So who is the artist? Can you share that, or is it too early to say?
Yeah, so Katsudon Art is the artist who I'm working with. She did some art for my game Army Men, and her art is amazing. She's based in the Philippines, great creator. We work really well together. I've been able to just send like, hey, I have this random idea, like my Orko tattoo. I'm like, I want a tattoo of Orko, and she's like, cool, I got that, I got you. And she like gave me something within a couple of hours that I was like, yep, I'm gonna put that on my skin. So.
Well, I have notes here for our interview, and one of the things was Army Men, but you've given me a marvelous opportunity to segue, to pivot into Army Men. So tell us about this venture of yours.
Yeah, so Army Men is a 5e, as in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, based game where you play plastic army people in a plastic army world. And it was written by Neil Litherland, who is a great writer, designer, and he had the game about 85% done and came to me and my company, High Level Games, and was like, I've got this awesome, cool idea. And I was like, this is amazing. I need to see this game. And we helped him, get it to 100%. We kickstarted it, and then we got it out. And we're almost fully fulfilled. We've got 3 people who haven't given us their surveys yet, but that's pretty close to 100% for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. You know what? You should stream this on Instagram so everybody can experience Army Men for themselves.
Definitely. It's definitely going to be a game that I'm going to do like an actual play or something about at some point soon. There's conversations about it.
So in this segue, talking about your role-playing game, I missed a question. So you dedicated the waves to Gail Simone and Neil Gaiman. Now, they are marvelous writers. You could have actually dedicated this to anyone, but why them in particular, aside from being marvelous?
Yeah. This story to me was a very like Neil Gaiman-esque story. There's bits and pieces of the fact that it's a person's internal personal journey, and there's this turmoil and stress that's happening, and I feel like that's the type of stuff that he writes. And so as I was putting it together, it made me think of, and I'm not comparing myself, but it made me think of the works that he has done. And I was like, yeah, I definitely feel inspired by your work, and hopefully maybe at some point you will see this and appreciate it for what it is. And then Gail Simone is someone who I've recently started like really following her work. I follow her on Facebook, and she is just an inspirational person in the field. An amazing mentor to people, amazing in supporting and building like anyone and everyone within the comic and gaming industry. She is there supporting people. And I was like, you know what? For someone that's so supportive, I just want to do a quick shout out and say, hey, thank you for all the support and amazing, mentoring that you do for people.
Well, when I shared the waves on Blue Sky, I know she reposted it, so hopefully she read it, and hopefully Neil read it, and anybody else who's watching this, go read it. So we're going to bring this home in a second, but you do streaming yourself. You are the Viking spiritual advisor for Vikings versus Samurai. That's my little joke. But you actually are a spiritual man, a philosopher, a heathen philosopher, actually. So let's bring this home. Tell people where they can go to read more of your stuff, play your games, or hear you speak about your heathen philosophy.
Yeah, well, if you're here on Instagram, then you can follow me on Josh the Heathen Philosopher. I'm also on YouTube under that name. You can find me at High Level Games or Keep on the Heathlands. Those are my two gaming-related websites. But if you're interested in hearing the things that I think about both the interplay of philosophy and Viking/heathen religion, Instagram's kind of the best place to go for it right now.
All right, Josh, thanks for talking with us. This is my thumbs up, by the way. Thanks for talking with us. I hope you send more stories our way, and I'm looking forward to reading your comic book. And here's the part where I'm going to point my finger at the screen and sign us off. I hate this part, but here we go.